Coming up are 10 riders which we think you should look out for at this year's Tour de France, plus a whole host of mind-blowing stats. Let's start with one of those stats then, shall we? Marcel Kittel of Quick-Step Floors has won 9 stages of the Tour de France in his career, out of the 62 road stages that he has started. That is a hit rate of 15%, which is not bad at all. However, it doesn't tell the whole story because, of course, lots of the stages at the Tour are not suited to the sprinters. So, he has sprinted for the win on 15 occasions, giving him a hit rate of 60%, which I think you'll agree is mightily impressive. What are we trying to say? Well, we think through those stats that Kittel will win at least one stage at this year's Tour de France, and probably more than that, given that there are 9 fairly flat stages. So how does that compare to the stats of Mark Cavendish? Well, many of you will know that he is now closing in on the all-time record of stage wins, that being Eddy Merckx, who took 34 in his career. Cav is now just 4 short of that mark. He's ridden 151 road stages in his career, giving him a hit rate of just under 20%, which is somewhere above that of Marcel Kittel. Now, Cav has sprinted for the win on those stages on 51 occasions, which then gives him a hit rate of just under 60%, so slightly less than Kittel, but given the volume of stages and the volume of wins, I would say that that stat is way more impressive. So the stats suggest that Cav will win multiple stages of this year's Tour de France. However, they do not take into account the fact that he has been recovering from the Epstein-Barr virus, which has taken him out for much of the season so far. A second place on the final stage of his comeback race, the Tour de Slovenia, does bode well, but there is no doubt he is going to be lacking the racing miles of his key rivals. And one of those rivals will, of course, be Andre Greipel, who is a former teammate of Mark Cavendish. Want some stats on the gorilla? Yeah, I thought you did. Well, he has won 11 stages of the Tour de France, but the incredible stat from Andre Greipel is that he has won at least one stage of the last 12 Grand Tours that he has entered in a row. That is a record which is only bettered by 2 greats of the sport, they being Bernardino and Eddy Merckx. So, the stats once again suggest that Andre Greipel will win at least one stage of this year's race. He's certainly got a strong team to back him up at Lotto Soudal. Without a big GC rider within their ranks, he will be their first priority. Peter Sagan, meanwhile, is a statistician's dream. He has won the green points jersey at every Tour de France in which he has competed, which is the last 5. However, out of the 94 road stages that he's won, he's only won 7, which is less than I thought. That's a hit rate of just 7.5%, so half that of Marcel Kittel and even further behind Mark Cavendish. However, it's when you look at his consistency that things become quite incredible. Out of those 94 stages on the road, he has finished in the top 10 on 52 occasions. That is a hit rate then of 55%, which really is quite remarkable, I think you will agree. So this year, Sagan will win the green jersey, he'll win a stage, and he'll be up there in almost every other stage. Richie Porte of Team BMC has barely set a foot wrong so far in 2017. Aside from a small blip in the cold, wet and wind of Paris-Nice and the fact that he was ganged up on the last stage of the Criterium du Dauphiné, aside from that, he has been consistent, impeccable and quite dominant, I think it's fair to say. Could this be the year where he finally steps out of the shadow of his former teammate Chris Froome? Well, you have to say, it's his best chance yet. Oh, you want a stat on Porte, don't you? Well, he is the shortest odds ever at the bookmakers to win the Tour de France for a rider who's never actually finished on the podium of a Grand Tour. I just made that up, but I reckon that's true. The latest of the young French hopes, Romain Bardet, has a lot to live up to after his runner-up position at the Tour de France this time last year. And I would personally say that along with Chris Froome, he's probably the only GC rider who would be happy to replicate the result from 12 months ago. Now, he hasn't quite hit his stride so far in 2017, but maybe he's timed his form to perfection. He'll certainly be hoping so. The Tour de France is the biggest race in the world, but as a French rider on a French team, the pressure is immense. Nairo Quintana's hopes of doing the Giro Tour double were quashed before he even got to the Tour de France this year, having been unable to get the better of a flying Tom Dumoulin at the Giro d'Italia. Will he go better at the Tour de France? Well, last year certainly his second Grand Tour was the better one, where he won the Vuelta a España, but we've got to remember that this is now his 4th Grand Tour in a row where he's going for the win. So fatigue surely is starting to kick in for him now. Now, there aren't many time trialling kilometres, which means it's good for Nairo Quintana, but the fact that there are only 3 mountaintop finishes means that I think it's going to be hard for him to take his first Tour de France victory this year. Now, I know you are dying for a Nairo Quintana stat, and I've got one that you are not going to believe. You ready? Nairo Quintana is only 27. Incredible. Quintana's teammate Alejandro Valverde has also never managed to win the Tour de France, but he's won pretty much everything else in his career. In fact, he's already won a lot in 2017, despite now being 37 years of age. He's taken 11 wins in total, 8 of which have been in World Tour races. He's finished the Tour de France on 7 occasions, always been inside the top 20, and in fact on 6 occasions he's been inside the top 8. He is consistency personified, and together with Quintana, they will form a dangerous duo. Alberto Contador of Trek Segafredo is the only man on the start line this year to have won all 3 of the Grand Tours. In fact, he's won all 3 of them at least twice during his career, but the fact that the last of those wins came at the 2015 Giro d'Italia and that he hasn't taken a win so far in 2017 has led a few people to speculate that his powers have waned. There's no doubt that he will have support in the mountains from Bauke Mollema and Jarlinson Pantano, but ultimately it's Contador's own legs which need to do the talking. One thing is for certain, even if he doesn't win, his aggressive racing style will ensure that he does play a big part in the final outcome. And we shall finish with Chris Froome, the defending champion and the man who's won this race now on 3 occasions. He has frankly looked unbeatable over the last few years. However, 2017, so far at least, has been a season to forget. He's not been bad, not at all, but we certainly haven't seen his previous powers so far this year. That said, he is still my favourite to take overall honours again. I just think he's got the experience, he's probably going to have the strongest team, his descending has improved dramatically, and as we saw last year, he is not afraid to attack anywhere. Right, if you've got any stats which you would like to share with us, you can do so in the comment section down below. You know I like some numbers. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, you will see a globe on the screen now. You just need to click on that. If you would like to purchase a special edition t-shirt from GCN for July, head over to shop.globalcyclingnetwork.com. You'll find this t-shirt and a whole host of others as well. And now we've got a couple of videos you might well be interested in. Down here is our full Tour de France preview, including all of the key stages. And down here, you can learn how to sprint with Mark Cavendish, a winner of 30 stages of the Tour de France.